You're listening to Tech Me Seriously with Sarah Tenisi, CEO of TenisiTech. Candid conversations with driven technology and business professionals who've always got something interesting to say.
Hi, I'm Sarah Tenisi, the host of Tech Me Seriously and CEO of TenisiTech, an IT services firm headquartered in California. Today, I'm thrilled to be speaking with Jossie Haines. Jossie is the CEO and founder of Jossie Haines Consulting. She's a public speaker and executive coach, helping women reach unprecedented success by designing their dream careers. She's also an engineer who has led award-winning engineering teams at companies like Tile and Apple. Today, we're going to be talking about AI and how to get started with leveraging the tools that we now have at our disposal. Welcome, Jossie.
Oh, I'm so happy to be here. I'm excited for this conversation.
Me too. And when we were planning this, I could have tons of conversations. I want to talk about the executive coaching and building dream careers, but this AI stuff is so top of mind for everybody. And I was at an executive forum and we were talking about AI, and there's a lot of data out there about how everyone's using AI, but a lot of companies don't actually know how to integrate it into their business system. So that's why I thought this would be a great topic for us. So obviously I just talked a little bit about why we're talking about this, but in your mind, why is this such an important topic right now?
Well, so every board I know is going to the leaders at their companies and saying, you need to integrate AI. AI is the big hot thing. We've got the CEOs of the AI companies saying this is going to change the world. You can have all this productivity. And so there's a lot of pressure to use AI, to build AI features. And so it's an important topic to get right. But what we're seeing right now is billions being spent on AI. And then when you actually look at the revenue and profits from that, it is not matching up to the spend. And there's a number of reasons for that.
Well, and I think that that's kind of what I'm focused on as well, is how are people even supposed to get started? And so what are you seeing? How are people starting? And is that the right way?
Yeah,
so answer.
The way I'm seeing people get started is just use AI. Let's try it, right? Throw something at the wall, right? At some of these very large tech companies, I have friends who work there and coaching clients who work there. And literally the initiatives they got from their leadership team is you will have every engineer in your team use AI for something, right? And I'm like, that's not a great OKR or goal, right? How does that actually tie back to business perspective? So first there's just this rush of let us use AI. And so what I see a lot of times happening is a few things, right? On the engineering side, they start playing around with the tools. They might not know how to effectively prompt. So maybe they use it once, especially a more senior engineer might use it once, be like, the thing that this produced wasn't great. I'm not going to use it. And now the company is paying for a license that's not being used. Or people are using it and are getting hallucinations or basically crap back from the AI that they think is great, right? Because they don't know what good looks like. And so it's not actually solving the problems. In the technology space, it's been seen that often, while it is increasing velocity of how quickly code is being written, the counter to that is it is introducing a lot more bugs. So if you're actually looking at end-to-end development time, then a lot of use cases of not implemented properly, we're actually taking more time to build things and or spending more time fixing things. And
yes,
and this from an IT perspective, right? The best time to catch a bug is actually don't introduce it in the first place. But the further
100%.
down the further down the pipeline it goes, the more expensive that bug is. And so we're literally introducing lots of bugs further down the pipeline, which is increasing costs potentially. So that's just one example. Or people are literally giving their entire company licenses to AI and just are like, here you go, use it. And people are like, I don't know what I'm supposed to use this for.
Exactly. And I mean, the bug example is really interesting because I studied computer engineering as much as I had to take a bunch of programming classes and I was not good at it, which is why I do IT. But I remember that missing semicolon, right? Because we're going like way back. We're going back
Yeah.
to C.
Yes.
And it's like you had to, I feel like we were always checking our code as we wrote it.
Mm-hmm.
And so this idea that you're actually introducing bugs automatically further down the line is really interesting to me. And you keep seeing like the IBM commercials that are like, you're coding with Watson. And it's like, oh good, I get to leave early on a Friday. It's like, no, you don't. Right. And so that is kind of where I feel like that pressure is coming from too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you can leave early on a Friday and then have to wake up at 3 a.m. when your alerting tool goes off because something catastrophically failed. And it's not just bugs, right? A lot of the research shows that if people are not explicitly asking the AIs to check for security vulnerabilities, a lot of security vulnerabilities are being introduced into a lot of the code. So all of these quote unquote vibe coded apps are being released by non-technical founders. And I'm not saying this isn't great for prototyping, right? For like product managers and designers to be able to go into one of these tools. This is where I think it actually can provide a lot of value and have them like vibe code something that like then you can actually have customers play around with and get some really great feedback on. Like that is amazing. But that is not something you then just turn around and put into production, right? And I think that's the
Define vibe
problem.
coding for us.
Yeah, so vibe coding is leveraging any of these tools, anything from like Claude, Cursor is a very common one for vibe coding, Lovable, Replit. Pick your AI coding tool and you basically give it a prompt of what you want it to look like and it will help you code. And it's called vibe coding because a lot of the people who are leveraging this are not engineers, right? They are able to go in and add new features, make changes, build things that they would have never been able to do before without a dedicated engineering resource.
Okay. I love that. So this is like non-technical people, like help me figure this out type of thing, which like you said is probably good for prototyping, but don't release that somewhere out in the wild. One of the things that I did want to talk about in this kind of intro section is what impact does starting off on the wrong foot have? And so we've already talked about a couple of things, right? Like introducing bugs when you weren't expecting to, ROI not actually being what you think it is because of that. What are some of the other impacts that you're seeing if you don't get started on the right foot?
And first of all, it's also just like wasting money, right? You're giving everybody a license to an AI tool that maybe like not everyone's even using.
And what is it like these days? It's like $20 a pop a month, like a user a month per tool.
Yeah.
So if you've got Claude and Chat GPT, that's $40 per user per month per tool.
Yep. And the business licenses are actually like 25 or 30. So
even more.
Even more, right? And so there's the cost piece, right? There's potentially introducing bugs. There's potentially people thinking they're being more productive, but actually when they look at it from a productivity point of view, it is actually taking them more time to go back and forth with the AI than for them to do it themselves. So these are all kind of performance, productivity, like business specific issues. The other big issue is, and there was this really great research paper that dove into this, is the unconscious bias piece about AI usage. And so if leadership is not specifically saying like, hey, using AI is actually not just something we want you to do, but we value people using AI. Sometimes if people produce things using AI, and I'm not saying like producing crap using AI, I'm saying producing actually like high quality work using AI, they can still be biased and judged. So the research study, what they did was they had a diverse diverse group of engineers and say, I created this with AI or I didn't create this using AI. But the code was actually exactly the same. And what they saw was for women and older engineers, they were considered less competent when they used AI, even when it was the exact same piece of code. The biggest competency hit was by men who didn't use AI, gave a 26% competency hit to women who did use AI.
Which is crazy. I mean, that's the last thing we need is new ways to introduce bias.
Exactly.
In engineering for women. Do you know what I mean? It's like, oh God, I really wasn't even thinking about that.
So that's another piece that, isn't being talked about as much. And the other thing that was really fascinating about this research, when they were talking about older engineers, like they were calling mature starting at 35, which I was like, oh, I've been mature for a long time now.
Exactly. It's terrible.
So I was like, if 35 is mature, we have another problem.
God. I mean, not to totally go down that rabbit hole, but I literally feel like I really caught my stride like when I was 40. So to your point, like in a career, 35 could still be relatively young.
Yeah.
Anyways, that's crazy. So we talked about some of the impacts. Any other ones you want to throw in there before we kind of talk further about how to get started?
I think it can also be just solving the wrong problem, right? And it goes back to the productivity thing, right?
Yeah.
And it's not even the wrong prompts. It can literally be like going back to like a coding example, right? So maybe you're giving the engineers these tools and they're coding faster, right? But maybe they're really not coding that much faster. And if you had actually done a look at like developer productivity, the biggest bottleneck for your engineers was actually maybe in your deployment process, right? Maybe it actually takes like 3 hours to deploy your code. I hope not, but like, let's exaggerate for the sake of this argument. But then it's like, okay, why does it matter if your engineer codes like 10 minutes faster to produce something if the big bottleneck is over here, right? And so the fact that people are just starting from this like, oh, let's just leverage AI tools. And I'm not saying you might not come up with some good ideas potentially that way, but we have to go back to engineering first principles. Like this isn't like reinventing the wheel. Like we know how to roll out new technology. We just kind of got like a blind, like we just pretended that AI was different for some reason.
That's such a good point. It's like, hey, everyone in IT and engineering, we know how to roll out. And you don't just throw it at people and say, let's see how it goes. Like there's a plan, right? And it's funny that we're talking about some of these examples because when AI first came out a few years ago, we were prompting it to build like different project plans for the types of projects that we did, whether it was a IT move project or a mail migration or how to build a project plan, whatever. And we felt really good because it matched what we were already doing. And so that's kind of the funny thing is like people are still building this. So if you're already competent and great at what you do, it's like take a step back, and we're going to talk about this in a few minutes, but we're going to talk about kind of how to get started. And it isn't let's deploy this tool and see what people do with it, which is exactly what's been happening for what are we on, like year 3 or 4 of this?
Like 2.5 before lots of people started digging into it. But yeah.
So let's like a second and or a few minutes and let's talk about like you. Like how do you find yourself, on a journey from being an engineering, VP to a consult or to a speaker, to a consultant, to like now you're doing a bunch of AI work. Talk about that a little bit.
So my corporate career was building large scale consumer products. So as you mentioned, I worked at Apple. I was the engineering leader leading the Siri music team for the development of the HomePod and the Siri on Apple TV integrations. After Apple, I actually almost left the industry entirely. I was kind of burnt out and fed up with the industry. And I also was going through a bout of imposter syndrome because like I felt very left out and unincluded when I was at Apple. And so when I ended up at Tile, it was a funny story. Like my former boss actually he was the VP of engineering at Tile at the time. And he convinced me to like join like as a very part-time contractor. And I was like, okay, I'll help you out. But like, like that's it. I'm not helping. Like that's it. And then Tyler got a new CEO, and when I was at Apple, I had wanted to start a mentoring program because I had started Women at Siri, and I wasn't allowed to start the mentoring program because the VP at the time at Apple didn't believe in mentoring. That's a whole other side tangent.
Yeah. This is literally another topic that we could dive into.
And so new CEO joined, saw that I was helping roll out this mentorship program. I was doing really well in like the part-time role I was doing, and there was an engineering role opening for a director of engineering. And I said to my boss, who I knew, I was like, look, I'm not taking anything without talking to the CEO. So I met with the CEO and I said to him, like, look, happy to join, but inclusion can't be lip service. Like, I want to help lead your DEI efforts. I want to roll out this mentoring program. This can't be just like a nice to have on the side thing. Like, I'm going to deliver on my engineering work, but this also has to become important. And he surprised me. He actually said, I want to make Tal the best place for women to work in the Valley, and that he had promised his wife and daughters that. And
Love it. I just got chills just so you know. Like,
I know, isn't
crazy.
that amazing? I not ever expected that to come out of like a CEO's mouth. So I joined and we delivered on the promise. And honestly, like this is a whole conversation on how you build inclusive cultures, but it was a team effort, right? Like I can't take like full credit for this, like the head of HR can't, like it really was that the leadership team was committed to this, and there was effort intentionally put into creating this. And to this day, I still have former colleagues reach out and say, I really miss the inclusive culture that we had built. We really built something.
Wow.
So
that's amazing.
Fast forward, I was a TAL for 4.5 years. I ended up leading DEI. I created my VP of engineering role and got my boss promoted to CTO in the middle of COVID.
I love it.
So that we could scale the engineering org. So we doubled engineering in 3.5 months in the middle of COVID. I completely reformed how we're doing the organization to make it more effective and more impactful. And it was successful, right? When I did this, like I didn't even know you could create a VP of engineering role. I was working with an executive coach, and
I love it.
She really opened my eyes to like, oh my gosh, these are the things that are possible. And, I had such a passion for retaining women in this industry. Over 56% of women leave tech by the age of 35, right? And I have had very successful experiences throughout my career. And I really took the realization that a lot of them were from the support I had. And
100%.
I was like, this is what I want to be doing. I want to help women leaders in this industry thrive. I want them to be able to create roles. And I also want them to be able to define success on their terms, right? And success can mean I go up the career ladder and I become a VP of engineering or a CTO or create my own company. It can also mean where I've gotten to today, which is I have a portfolio career. I have very little interest in working as a full-time employee ever again. I love what I do. I run my coaching business. I am a fractional engineering leader right now, running a small engineering team where we basically built what was one of my hackathon projects, a tile, and launched it earlier this year. And so then how did I get into the AI piece? I started using AI myself for my own business. Back when ChatGPT came out, I was like, oh, this is really cool. And so I started using it and really geeking out on it. And what I really like is I definitely have I love coaching and it really is emotionally rewarding, but the engineering side of my brain also can't be bored, right? And so I really and that's the other reason why I have a portfolio career is like, I've learned from myself that if all I did was coaching and didn't get to dig into the technology, like that half of my brain would not be happy. And so I really started leveraging AI, not just for my business, but then I was like, oh, how can I use this for my engineering teams? And then I started using it more and I was starting to talk to my coaching clients about this. And I had coaching clients and friends working at the biggest tech companies. Actually had a coaching client who one of their teams was literally building using one of the AI products, and they were not using AI themselves. And that was the eye opener. And then every single person I taught to leverage AI effectively would always come back to me and be like, oh my gosh, Josie, this is now so useful for their own productivity, let alone all the other things that we talked about earlier about how, like, if you're leading by example and really showcasing, like, focusing on it from the challenges perspective, like, you're going to get much more traction. You can help reduce bias, all of these things. And so that's what really made me explore this, like, combination of, you start with the leadership coaching, because again, going back to what I said earlier, you do need to start with, like, what is the actual problems to be solved, and then figure out where to apply AI to that strategically.
Well, I love it. And that is literally the best segue we could have ever had to this next kind of part of the discussion, which is, okay, so how do people get started? And I guess as we're talking about this, I mean, maybe we just point it out in the discussion as it kind of naturally occurs, but I kind of thought, like, is there a difference between what leaders need to be doing and what individuals need to be doing, right? So I kind of wanted to start with the leadership side of it, because what I'm hearing at my CEO roundtables is, we love it, we don't know what to do. And what I think you're hearing out in the world is, we're doing it. And it's like, how are you doing it? Like really, and the stat I heard is, out of everybody who's talking about it, only 30% of people are getting any traction whatsoever. And it might not even be the right traction, right? In the right areas. So let's kind of start there, is like, for leaders, what should companies, like engineering leaders, or where do they start?
Yeah. And I mean, it's hard, right? Because especially right now in the current tech climate, leaders are being asked to do more with less, right? They are literally, if leaders are getting larger teams, orgs are flattening, right? So I'm not saying this is not a hard problem right now, right? And
it's a hard problem, for sure.
Now I'm saying, like, oh, now go spend some of your non-existent time to go learn AI, which is one of the reasons why, like, I now, like, help leaders with this stuff, right? Because I'm like, you don't have to go, like, experiment with all these things. I think first of all, it is starting with, again, what are your challenges as the leader? Like, what are your goals? Like, where are you focused on? Like, what are your top 3 things that you're focused on? And can AI help you in some ways to do that? And then the other half is, what is the admin work that you do, and can you leverage AI to help you do that so that you're not having to do it manually? So here's a prime example. So I have a coaching client. She's an engineering leader. She just started recently in the last, like, 3 or 6 months at a new company. She is managing a team who inherited a legacy tech stack. They don't know the code base very well, so it's hard for them to predict how long things take to build. Part of the tech stack is actually new to her. Like, she hasn't worked on Bluetooth specific products before. And so we were meeting and she's like, what do I do? Like, where do I spend my time? So first we started with, like, okay, like, let's get clear on your priorities. And the priorities were, okay, you do need to build up, especially at a smaller startup, enough fluency in the code base and understanding
the current code base,
where it works, as well as understanding, like, I don't expect her to become, like, a Bluetooth expert, but she needs to be cognizant enough about Bluetooth. And then we also need to empower her team to feel more confident about this legacy code base that they've now picked up. So it's like, you can use code inspection tools to actually have them describe the architecture. You can have those same tools, like, and actually give it prompts like, where do you think the architecture here might have bugs in it? Like, where are the vulnerabilities, right? Like, and again, it's a trust but verify thing, right? These are engineers who, like, know what good looks like, so they can look and see what AI is returning and agree or disagree, right? I am not saying you blindly take what AI returns, and that's one of the big problems. And then one of the other challenges was her team was a little bit junior on knowing how to break down work from a project planning perspective. So I helped her think about, like, if you were to sit down and coach somebody on how to break down a piece of work, could we actually document on a kind of a step-by-step process of what that would look look like. And so we did. And then she was able to turn that into a custom GPT so that it could help her team like do at least the first level pass. And then she could then take that and work with them. But then she's just not, it's how, like, that allowed her to multiply herself. Right?
Well, and I want to pause just on this thought for a second, because I've interviewed on Tech Me Seriously a friend that I have who runs a company, not an engineering company, but what she did is create these custom GPTs. So I just want to revisit what that is for people. Can you do that?
Yeah. So a custom GPT is basically a set of instructions as well as data, usually like PDF files or other files that you can leverage in a repeatable way. So for example, the one I shared for my coaching client, one that I have one that helps me with writing long form content. And I have it first start by asking what the topic is, giving me a summary. Then I have it come up with 5 questions that I then answer, and then it does an outline, and then it starts writing it section by section, right? And so instead of having to repeat these over and over again, basically give these instructions and customize the custom GPT going back and forth to make sure it's giving the results you need. And then you can use this over and over again instead of having to do that multiple times.
Well, and the example that you gave about building a project plan, right? You could say to somebody, hey, this is me teaching you how to build a project plan. So when you're building a project plan, use this GPT. Like, you don't have to wait for my calendar to open up. You don't have to, wait for me. Use it, and then let's go through what you come up with. So again, it's not unchecked. It's like, let's see what it comes up with this GPT. And I love that example because it can multiply a person. I've heard of like training coaches doing that, where it helps them write training content.
Yeah.
And then it kind of automates that. That would be one of those admin pieces of your job, right? Coming up with content is one that everybody has.
Yeah.
So I love that example for people because, again, it's not like go build my code. It's like multiply who I am, and I'm going to help build that thing. Okay, so I love that example.
And then, so you were asking about leaders versus individuals, right? And I think, my belief is you always want to start, like I was saying, from those challenges, right? And obviously the challenges leaders have might be different from the challenges that individuals have. But here's another example, and this is for an individual. Works in the legal department. His company gave him a license to plug. And he's like, I don't know in the world I'm supposed to use this with. We sat down for 30 minutes and chatted, and I was like, oh, hey, there's all these use cases, like doing like corporate compliance. There's a lot of like legal standards. Like you get a ticket queue of queues. You can feed it your ticket data and then have it help you with other tickets, like creating, requirements, documents, right? And now he like uses it all the time and it's super valuable. And it's like having an extra pair of hands, but not everybody has somebody to like sit down with them for 30 minutes and tell them how to use an AI. But I think this is the thing that companies are missing is it seems so easy, right? It's like, oh, just start talking with it. Like, why do we need to train our employees? But yet at the same time, like once you get people thinking in this mindset of, okay, like, how do I break down a problem, right? Then there's just like some of these like tips and strategies, right? Like from a content perspective, for example, the first piece of content it returns is going to be okay. But you can then say, and I usually do this at least twice, hey, critique what you just wrote from the perspective of my target audience and give me feedback on how you would change it. And I usually do at least 2 passes of that. And then I go from like good to great. And then I go do a pass as well because honestly, I'm like, let it get me to the 80-90%. And then I need to take over. Like that's where the like human-centric aspect of this is still crucial. And from the leader perspective, I tell leaders like leverage AI to do all the non-human-centric leadership things that it can do so that you can focus on the things that only you can uniquely do well, right? You can leverage AI to help you brainstorm, but you still need to be the one who like ingests all that and then comes up with the actual strategy that you're going to execute.
Exactly. So the use case thing is really important. And when you and I were talking about this before, what this feels like to me, what this like AI revolution feels like, is digital transformation
Mhm.
15 years ago.
Yeah.
And in my practice, what I noticed is that people still haven't fully done a digital
Mhm.
transformation. Because what did that really mean, right? Digitizing those manual processes. People are still doing so many manual processes. So in my practice, it's been like, okay, I totally get you want to do AI, but you still don't know where your data is. You still can't talk about your pain points, right? And that was kind of one of the things that we talked about early on. So really going back to these basics of when do you just like a business case scenario almost like when do
Mhm.
you decide to use these tools, and that is kind of, you're right, it's like for some reason AI came out and everybody was like, oh, we don't need to think about how we roll something out.
Yeah, people are pointing AI at their production databases. And this is like
Scary.
crazy and scary to me, right? Like
It's awful.
you wouldn't give a junior engineer full access to production and be like,
That's right.
have at it, right? But yet we do that with AI and like get shocked when it all of a sudden deletes our production database.
Oh my God. Have you seen that happen? That's your like nightmare case scenario that you know
So,
about.
so there was this one around LinkedIn, I think like 4 or 5 months ago. I believe it was the CEO, I think of SaaStr, was like doing some vibe coding in production and lost, I think it was like all his customer data. I think he had a backup at least, but yeah, it deleted the like production database. And it's like, yeah, you would point a junior engineer straight at production. Please don't expect like a vibe coding. And this is where going back to like how vibe coding can be very dangerous, right? It's
Right.
like, yeah, this is great. Like, I love the fact that it unlocks like founders' creativity and all these things, but you still need somebody who knows what good looks like to make sure you're looking at it from like a security point of view, a data privacy point of view.
Right.
Because guess what? At some point, like, let's say your company becomes massively successful and you're going to go public someday. You're going to need data privacy, compliance,
So that
all of
part's
these
really,
things.
well, and that part's really interesting to me as it pertains to our business, because that's one of the things that I think people are not talking about enough, right? Is what those policies are supposed to be and what not to do with your client data. And we do a lot of IT compliance, or not just IT compliance, but help our customers achieve
Mm-hmm.
a compliance framework or whatever. And I feel like that's something that when you say to people, use AI and tell me how it works for you, you're not giving them enough guardrails. And it is very scary for a data privacy and a customer data perspective. And I think the other point of that is like, okay, how is a company, an IT company, going to assuage the security requirements that exist for our clients, who, by the way, our clients don't even ask us about that stuff,
Yeah.
which is part of why they have us. Do you know what I mean? So I think there's that too. You know, we've been talking, I think, to start about these really large engineering companies and how they're using it. And we're trying to talk to our smaller clients, let's say
Mm-hmm.
there's 600 to 1,000 people, about how they should be using it, right? Because they want to
Right.
know too. And so it's like, how do we start to build services as providers and as leaders to help the company versus hurt it?
Absolutely. And I mean, this is applicable. I gave a number of examples for large startups, but this is also very applicable going back to the founder who's vibe coding the newest startup, right? If that founder doesn't happen to have an engineering background, they might have no idea on like thinking about like not that they're being malicious, but it's like that's not what's in the
Right.
back of their head. They're not thinking about like, oh, how do I make sure my customers data stays private? How do I make sure
They're the
nobody
visionaries,
can,
right?
yeah.
They're not the ones at the detail level.
Right. And so that is like the big challenge I see right now with, again, these like vibe coded apps. We're seeing so many security vulnerabilities being introduced. And it's a little little scary because like now you can release something much faster than you ever could before and just get an application up. And your customers really have very little idea on their privacy. And again, from a customer point of view, your assumption is my data is hopefully being kept private and security is being considered and all of these things. But it's not being looked at right now. And a lot of these just like, oh, let's vibe code something over the weekend and I'll release it on my website and start getting customers on Monday, right?
Well, exactly. And I think the other thing, and I mean, this is really scary for CTOs and CIOs and like people like me, where we're often asked to do the security reviews for products that our clients are buying.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so now, lucky that they have us, but we've worked in a lot of small companies that don't have that process.
Right.
So they're, and these are not companies that are, I don't know, I should say fashion designers, fast fashion designers, where things are so quick that they're not as worried about security as other people. These are people like maybe doing healthcare, like hospice care or regional hospital work or like whatever. They're just not thinking about that stuff.
Absolutely.
And so I think the security piece, I guess, like as we're talking, I keep thinking, okay, how are we going to prepare people to ask those questions?
And then this is another point, and we could go into a long discussion about this, but going back to like how companies are rolling out AI and how people are using AI at companies, when companies are actually not providing the AI tools or are not providing the AI tools that people want to be using or are comfortable with, people are
that's a whole, yes,
they're using their personal accounts. And the big problem with that is unless you're explicitly going into ChatGPT and actually now Claude in their latest terms of service, they're both defaulted on to your data being leveraged for training their models. And so that is insanely scary, like the shadow AI usage at corporations, because people are figuring out how to use AI and note the use cases they want to use it for the people who are, like those early adopters who are like curious and excited and have figured it out. And so they're going in and just doing it themselves with the tools they like to use. And that provides a whole other slew of security problems.
It makes me feel like, and do you remember like cloud access security broker applications, right? CASB solutions.
Yeah.
It's like now you need them more than ever. It's like, you remember when like the QR code basically died and then COVID brought it back and now we have QR codes on everything and it's like the most fantastic thing in the world.
Yep.
I feel like now people are really going to need to use these CASB services. And also I'm sitting here thinking we need to lock endpoints down and networks down from allowing people to bring these tools inside because we don't know what people are using them for and everybody's using them.
Mm-hmm.
And that, like, think about that. This is so basic what we're talking about. People are absolutely not starting here.
No.
And I think that that's almost the other thing is like, how do we get people to step back and say, okay, we got to clear the slate. We have to lock some of this down. We have to put some code of conduct resources in place for people. You always had acceptable use on how to use a computer. Well, now we need one on how to use AI.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I think it comes back to look at the cost, because obviously we're talking businesses, right? And at the end of the day, what really moves the needle and what matters is, are you going to lose money on this? Are you going to lose customers on this? Or can you make money on this, right?
That's right.
And a security vulnerability where you get a class action lawsuit against you is a very expensive company killer, right? And again, going back to what I said earlier, the farther down the pipeline the bug is, the more expensive it is going to be to fix. So even if you don't have like some big lawsuit about it, like if you've had this out as a vulnerability for a long time, who knows how long it's going to take you to fix all of these security things when you don't start with that from the beginning. And that is why we can never get rid of engineers, right? Because at the end of the day, I'm not saying you can't make engineers like 10x their productivity.
More
We've
productive.
talked about
Yes.
there's been many times during the iteration of being a software engineer that things have gotten more productive, right? And yet, knowing what good looks like, knowing what a good architecture looks like, knowing how to scale an architecture, knowing where to think about security and other vulnerabilities, you still need that human in the loop to do those things.
You know what just scared me a little bit? This thought popped into my mind as you were saying this was I feel like what we're talking about is having critical thinking skills in your area of expertise.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I think it goes toward engineering. It goes to the productivity stuff. Like I'm writing a paper. You still need to know enough about what you're asking it to write for you that you can proofread it and change it as necessary.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same thing we're saying about code. You still have to know enough about good code and know how to code well in order to see what this thing is spitting out at you. And so what worries me about is I don't know that we as a society have the best critical thinking skills as it is. And again, that's like a whole other topic.
Oh my
right?
gosh. So I'll have a little aside on this.
I love it.
I love Cal Newport. He's a computer science professor who talks a lot about living the deep life. One of his most famous books is Deep Work. He has a podcast, which is amazing. And he talks about this a lot. And in a recent podcast episode, he was talking about this. What a lot of people aren't talking about is like IQ has started going down in the world. Like it had gone up for decades. And then 2010 hit. You know what happened in 2010?
Facebook came out.
The iPhone.
The iPhone. Okay, sure.
And it's tied to social media too, right? Like
100%.
iPhone, social media, both tied because now, like, if Facebook wasn't bad when it was just on a desktop. It was like when you got Facebook on your mobile device, and now you're getting people doing all this, like, just short form content. People are reading a lot less.
I've been watching a lot about this right now.
They're only looking at one side of a viewpoint, and that doesn't allow for critical thinking, right? And so, I mean, and there could be lots of political things about this or not, but I'm not even talking about that. I'm literally saying, from the way these algorithms are making our brains work, we are actually becoming dumber and thinking critically less. And so we really, if we want to be good at critical thinking, which is one of the going back to the human-centric things that we are good at, we need to be intentional about reading. We need to be intentional about getting off of social media and short-form content. We need to be intentional about curating articles that talk about both sides of a story and really critically evaluating it. Maybe we don't agree, but that's okay. Like, that is how you are able to do an analysis of something. It's not just like getting one side of a version. And unfortunately,
or a 15, finish that thought.
Oh, and I was going to say, and unfortunately, algorithms are not built this way. Algorithms are literally built to give the content that has the most engagement and popping that up. And especially TikTok and 30-second videos is not helping our brains.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not, right? And the other thing, there's been a lot on this recently, right? Is those 15-second videos drag you through an emotional obstacle course. You go from feeling really excited to really depressed in very short periods of time. And again, like, this is what I mean. Every time I talk to you, I'm like, write this down for another discussion, because I think that's part of what I'm worried about. You know, I have a 21-year-old in college. And I'll let you know, like, everybody's using this to write papers. And he and I talked, and I said, how are you going to make the most out of your college experience when things are changing so rapidly and you know you're getting content that you need to evaluate? And, you know, the one time he didn't read it over was the one time he failed on a paper. You know, I feel like the professor was super generous and said something like, looks like you had a lot of help on this, try again type of thing. And so that's one of the things that I think we have to be careful of, because we can't just allow this to be our mouthpiece.
Yeah.
So let's take it back. Let's take it back just a second. Let's highlight the top 3 things to do when you're getting started.
Yes.
Like, what would we say those are?
So I would say start with the challenges, right? Like, what are the actual pain points where you could leverage AI effectively? And I'm not saying that you don't still have to experiment, right? I think AI is new, right? So once you've identified the challenges, experiment and realize that, we were talking about writing those custom GPTs, right? Some of them are going to be great and some of them might fall flat. And until you try to build them, you might not know and see what works or not. So you still want to have that experimentation mindset, but within the context of, hey, I'm actually solving a real problem that I have. Then I think talking about from the, if you're a leader perspective, the normalizing the AI usage and how you want to value it as your company, right? Just like you were talking about creating those like codes of conduct around AI usage, talking about how to leverage it effectively, like not making people feel, if it's something your company values, making sure people aren't being biased against for leveraging it. And do focus on using it to multiply yourself, right? From a leadership perspective. And I think having that mindset shift, right? Like this is about how can I redefine and focus on what I uniquely bring as value instead of trying to solve 1,000,001 problems with AI.
And that's hard, right?
Right.
I mean, think about all the people you're coaching. I bet you start with, what do you think your unique values are? What do you bring to the table? That is so hard for people to answer if they've never been asked it before.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Do you know what I mean? Like, I think, and this is sort of like grind culture in the Valley as well. It's like, just go get it done.
Right.
The faster, the better. Don't peek your head up to think, wait a minute, like, what am I bringing to the table? What's important to me? And I mean, that's part of why the coaching aspect of this ties in so beautifully to what you're doing with your company focused work, right? Not just your coaching, but what you're doing with companies. I mean, there's so much there to unpack. So on the flip side, what are the don'ts?
So first, don't just throw AI at the wall and tell your employees just go use it, right? Like, just like with any technology adoption, right? You're going to get people who are excited about using technology and they might try it out. Doesn't mean they're going to figure it out effectively, but maybe they do, right? But you're also going to get a large group of people, most likely, potentially, like more of your non-technical folks are going to be like, I don't know what to use this for. And I'm already underwater and like how much time I have to do stuff. I'm not going to go learn another
That's
tool.
What my team's saying to me is, hey, we have a list of 75 things that we want to automate, we want to configure properly, we want to do. Like, it's not that we don't know how to do it, it's that who's going to do it.
Right.
So now you want to add AI services? What are you talking about?
Yeah.
Which is like, why I'm like, well, we're going to have to work with Jossie on this.
Yeah.
Seriously.
And I think don't delegate your strategy or 100% of the answer to anything to the AI tool. You still have to look, what is good? Does this produce actually what you told it to do? Did it AI loves to shortcut and it also loves to make up things, right? So are you validating? Like, where do you need the human part of the validation in the loop? Where are you adding your value add, your strategic thought process, right? So using AI to amplify your judgment and thinking, not replacing it.
And I think that's, I love that. I just think that's important to like underscore, like use it to amplify, not replace.
Yes. And don't just equate like throwing AI to more productivity, right? Like, because even like I said, even if it does technically get you, like going back to the coding perspective, even if you're producing code faster, you're still not looking at the end-to-end potential cost, right? And I'm not saying you can't do both. I'm not saying you can't actually use the tools to help you code faster and also look at these security things, but you need to have those ways of working defined and in place and still treat the fact that as an engineer, when you submit a pull request and you're doing a code review, that you're still committing, like, I believe in the quality of that code and I understand how it works. And I've thought through the security side and the scaling side and the vulnerabilities that might come in here. We can't just pretend and just be like, well, AI came up with it. Like, we just trust it. And
It must be great.
It must be great. Yeah.
Yeah. You know what it reminds me of? I feel like engineers are having this moment that IT people had when VMware became like the thing, right? Everyone was like, there's going to be no sysadmins running IT anymore. You're just going to throw it in the cloud and walk away. It's like, wait a minute, guys. We still need to know how to do all of that. We're just doing it on someone else's systems.
Yes.
That's it. Like, the only thing that changed was that you don't walk up to a server and plug in your console cable.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, right now I'm seeing this crazy, scary trend where all these companies are like firing their entire QA departments. And they're like, oh, we're just going to leverage AI to QA everything. And I'm just like, oh, in a year and a half to 2 years, they're going to hire that entire team back. And you're going to have all this built up tech debt that you've accumulated because you thought you could just get rid of your entire QA team.
Well, and guess who's not coming back? Those people that made your product the best. They're not coming back to you either. You're going to have to find new people.
Yep.
Okay, so I want to wrap this up. And I mean, I don't know. I feel like this is everyone's favorite question. Everyone who's working with AI. I'm going to ask you to look into your crystal ball. What do you think is going to happen over the next, I don't know, 2 to 5 years?
I think the bubble is going to burst a little bit, right? I think boards are going to start looking at the amount of money that has been spent and then actually look at the gains that are out there and are going to start questioning more and more. And I think we're going to slow down a little bit. And hopefully we're going to start thinking about, okay, how do we use AI to solve real problems? But let's also be realistic and not just be claiming that AI is going to magically replace like 50% of like white collar jobs in the next 2 years, because we hit a limit, right? We already, with ChatGPT 5, right, and all of the equivalent LLMs, we hit the limit of being able to throw more computing power and processing power and making the LLM become massively better, right? From an architecture point of view, we have to come up with something else if we want it to scale at the way it's scaled between Chat 2 and 3 and 3 and 4, right? And so let's instead really focus on, I do think there's a lot of power behind leveraging AI effectively. It helps me. I use AI on a day-to-day basis, right? So people might think, oh, she's anti-AI. I'm like, no. I love AI. But I'm also not claiming that it's going to replace my entire engineering team.
Well, and I feel like that's part of maybe like if people walk away with anything on this, it's like go back to basics, look at how we used to do rollouts, think about use cases, gather your data, know what you're looking for as a result of leveraging the tools. Right? I mean, that's really what we're talking about. It's so funny because I do these like anti-phishing quick guides, and literally one of them is slow down. So I feel like, read and slow down. Don't just hit accept, like on the terms of service, like we all do. But like, I feel like that's kind of what we're talking about. And it's a little bit worrisome that it's gained so much traction. And yet we're saying, hey, could we all just take a step back and do this the right way? Because it feels like, at least when I'm talking to you about it right now, it feels like we could all be making things a lot harder for ourselves.
Yes.
In the future, if we don't take a step back, work with people like you. And I mean, I was looking this up while we were talking, and like one of our service director and I are going to do a Tech Me Seriously episode on customer service and AI. And Builder AI, do you know the story about Builder at all? Okay, so Builder was doing like some customer service, whatever, agent tool. And they basically, I guess, were selling that they were like customer service agents, like GPTs or something. Well, it turned out they had 700 people that were still doing the work. It wasn't actually an AI bot.
Oh my
It was a person. So that, and I'll send this to you after, but it's like, here's the headline. Builder.ai faked AI with 700 engineers, now faces bankruptcy and probe. Like, that's kind of the thing. It's like, hey, vibe coding CEO founders, like, don't do this. Don't say it's AI and then have 700 engineers about it or behind it, because look what happens. I mean, that's the stuff that I think everyone wants to avoid. Like, don't be the one that puts all your customer data out there and fails. Like, instead, take a deep breath, work with the right people, and get this off the ground the right way.
Or the customer service agents, where they replaced it fully with AI and then have now had to hire back their customer support teams for some of it because the AIs have said like ludicrous things or insulting things or completely wrong things to their customers.
Well, and I keep thinking, like, every time we talk about this example, it's like, if you let your team go, I think Apple actually did a study or something. It costs something like 70% more to hire a new employee and train them to replace a seasoned employee.
Yep.
So literally think about that ROI. Like, we're talking about, not only are you planting bugs in, but you're getting rid of people that know you, that have worked with you, that know the product inside out, know your customers.
Yep.
These people are not coming back to you.
No.
They're going to go do it somewhere else. So this has been an absolute pleasure for me to like dig into with you. I can't wait to continue with these other topics that we keep talking about. And thank you so much for being here today.
Yes, this was so much fun. And yeah, I feel like we could have easily talked for another few hours on random topics.
It's crazy. Me too. We'll have you back for sure.
Well, yes, thank you so much for having me.